What if the greatest mistake you have ever made was believing that your dream belongs in the future? What if the life you long for is not waiting to happen, but waiting to be remembered? Today, I invite you to step beyond the limits of clocks, calendars, and human logic. Imagine for a moment that your deepest desire was fulfilled yesterday. Feel the relief, the gratitude, and the certainty of someone who no longer hopes because they already know. The moment you stop chasing tomorrow and begin remembering yesterday, something extraordinary begins to shift within you. Your mind relaxes, your heart opens, and reality starts to reorganize itself around your new assumption. This is not about pretending. It is about choosing a state of consciousness so completely that the invisible becomes inevitable. Welcome to the method of assuming it already happened yesterday. The greatest shift you can ever make is not changing your circumstances, but changing your relationship with time. Most people spend their lives reaching toward tomorrow, believing that happiness, abundance, love, or success is always one step ahead. They wake up thinking about what they do not have, speak about what they hope to receive, and pray from a place of waiting. In doing so, they unknowingly keep their desires alive as distant possibilities rather than present realities. The mind continues to search because it has accepted that fulfillment belongs somewhere in the future. But there is another way, a way that transforms longing into certainty. Instead of living from desire, begin living from memory. Imagine waking up with the quiet confidence that your greatest wish was fulfilled yesterday. You would not beg for it today, because you would already possess the emotional evidence of having experienced it. You would carry yourself differently. Your conversations would change. Your reactions would soften. Fear would lose its grip because you would no longer be trying to secure an uncertain future. The heart naturally rests when it believes the journey is complete. This is the secret of moving from effort into ease. Think about how memories influence your emotions. You do not struggle to believe in something that happened last week because your mind has already accepted it as fact. Whether the memory is joyful or painful, it carries an unquestioned authority. The subconscious does not argue with what it recognizes as already experienced. By deliberately imagining your desire as though it happened yesterday, you invite your inner world to accept it with the same certainty. Instead of saying, "I hope this comes," you silently know, "I remember when this became real." This subtle change removes the tension that often blocks progress. Desperation fades because desperation belongs to those who feel separated from what they seek. The one who remembers is not chasing anything. They are simply recalling an event that has already become part of their story. There is peace in that state, and peace has a remarkable power. It allows creativity to flow, opportunities to appear, and intuition to become clearer. The mind stops resisting because it no longer feels trapped in lack. As you move through your day, let every action arise from this remembered fulfillment. If you are imagining financial freedom, let your thoughts reflect someone who has already experienced abundance. If you are imagining perfect health, carry yourself with the gratitude of someone who has already recovered. If you are imagining a loving relationship, let kindness and confidence replace loneliness and doubt. You are not pretending to others. You are training your own consciousness to dwell in a new identity. The world around you often mirrors the story you repeat within yourself. If that story is always about waiting, life continues to offer reasons to wait. But when your inner dialogue becomes the quiet recollection of a fulfilled life, something profound begins to change. You stop measuring progress by appearances and start measuring it by the stability of your inner state. Every moment becomes another opportunity to strengthen the memory rather than reinforce the desire. So tonight, Before you close your eyes, do not imagine yourself hoping for tomorrow. Instead, remember yesterday. See the congratulatory handshake, hear the joyful phone call. Feel the relief in your chest and smile as though it already unfolded. Let your imagination create a memory so vivid that your heart accepts it without resistance. The more naturally you live from that remembered experience, the less distance remains between your inner conviction and your outer reality. And in that sacred space where memory replaces desire, what once seemed impossible begins to feel not only possible but inevitable. Your mind is constantly sorting through experiences, deciding what is real and what is imagined. Yet it responds with remarkable power to whatever you repeatedly impress upon it with feeling. This is why a vivid memory can make your heart race years after an event has passed, and why a simple thought can bring tears or laughter in an instant. The subconscious does not carefully examine whether an experience came from the outer world or the inner world. It responds to emotional conviction. When you begin to treat your fulfilled desire as though it happened yesterday, you bypass the endless struggle of trying to convince yourself that it will happen someday. Instead, you gently allow your consciousness to accept it as something already woven into your personal history. Most people spend their days affirming what they can see. They say they are still waiting because they cannot yet touch the result. They speak of obstacles, delays, and uncertainty, reinforcing the very reality they wish to escape. Every complaint becomes another reminder that the dream remains distant. But the moment you replace longing with remembrance, something shifts. You stop asking the universe for permission and begin living with the quiet assurance that your answer has already arrived. A remembered event carries a sense of completion that desire can never produce. Picture someone asking you about your greatest achievement. If it truly happened yesterday, you would not struggle to explain it. You would naturally describe the emotions, the details, and the gratitude that followed. Your confidence would come from experience rather than expectation. That same confidence can be cultivated within imagination. Close your eyes and replay the scene until it feels familiar. Hear the voices that congratulate you. Feel the weight of success settling comfortably upon your shoulders. Let your mind revisit that inner experience so often that it becomes easier to remember than to doubt. The subconscious mind thrives on repetition mixed with emotion. Dry words have little influence, but feeling transforms imagination into belief. This is why simply repeating affirmations without conviction often leaves people frustrated. The missing ingredient is emotional certainty. When you remember rather than wish, emotion arises naturally. Relief replaces anxiety. Gratitude replaces desperation. Satisfaction replaces endless striving. These feelings impress the subconscious more deeply than forced optimism ever could. As this inner memory becomes stronger, your behavior begins to change without conscious effort. You make decisions from confidence instead of fear. You notice opportunities you once ignored. You speak with calm authority because your inner world no longer argues against your vision. Even challenges lose their power to discourage you because they appear temporary compared to the certainty you carry within. The memory becomes your anchor, holding you steady while circumstances rearrange themselves. Do not be concerned if the outer world initially appears unchanged. Memories do not lose their truth simply because someone else questions them. Hold your imagined experience with the same loyalty you would hold an actual event from your past. Return to it morning and night until it feels as natural as remembering your childhood home or your favorite celebration. The more familiar it becomes, the less effort is required to sustain it. Eventually, the line between imagination and expectation disappears. You no longer hope because hope implies distance. You no longer chase because chasing implies absence. Instead, you quietly remember. And the mind, unable to resist a memory accepted with feeling and persistence, begins shaping your perception, your actions, and ultimately your reality to match the story you have already chosen to believe. In that moment, you discover that the strongest force in creation is not the wish for a different future, but the unwavering memory of a fulfilled one. One of the greatest transformations you can experience is the moment gratitude becomes stronger than desire. Most people believe they will be thankful after their dreams come true. They tell themselves, when I receive the opportunity, I will be grateful. When the money arrives, I will celebrate. When the relationship appears, I will finally feel complete. Yet this way of thinking keeps fulfillment forever attached to tomorrow. Gratitude is treated as a reward for success instead of the foundation that invites it. The secret is to reverse the order. Feel thankful first, and the struggle that once consumed your mind begins to disappear. Think about how naturally gratitude flows when something wonderful has already happened. You do not force yourself to appreciate a gift you truly received. The feeling rises on its own because your heart recognizes that the experience is real. Now imagine carrying that same emotion into your inner world before any physical evidence appears. If you assume your wish became reality yesterday, gratitude becomes effortless. You are no longer trying to convince yourself that something might happen. You are quietly appreciating what your imagination has already accepted as complete. The remarkable thing about gratitude is that it changes your entire state of being. A grateful person does not carry the energy of lack. They are not searching, begging, or worrying because their attention rests on fulfillment instead of absence. The mind cannot focus deeply on appreciation and desperation at the same time. One naturally dissolves the other. As gratitude grows, fear loses its influence, doubt becomes quieter. Anxiety begins to fade because your inner conversation shifts from, what if it never happens, to, I'm so thankful it already did. This inner change affects every part of your life. You begin walking with confidence instead of uncertainty. Your words become softer because you are no longer trying to prove anything. Decisions arise from abundance rather than scarcity. Even the smallest moments feel richer because your attention has moved from chasing what is missing to appreciating what is present within your consciousness. People often notice this transformation without understanding its source. They sense peace where there was once tension and certainty where there was once confusion. Gratitude also teaches patience without making you passive. It does not mean ignoring your goals or refusing to act. Instead, your actions flow from trust rather than panic. Imagine planting a seed in fertile soil. Once it is planted, you do not dig it up every hour to check whether it is growing. You trust the unseen process while continuing to care for it. Gratitude creates that same quiet confidence. It says, the seed has already taken root, and I rejoice because I know the harvest is certain. Every evening, before sleep welcomes you into stillness, revisit the fulfilled version of your life and thank it as though it has already become part of your history. Feel appreciation for the promotion that came, the healing that occurred, the relationship that blossomed, or the opportunity that transformed everything. Let your heart celebrate without waiting for permission from the outer world. The subconscious responds to this emotional certainty and begins aligning your thoughts, attitudes, and perceptions with the state you consistently occupy. The struggle only survives when you believe you are separated from what you seek. Gratitude quietly removes that separation by declaring that the blessing is already yours. It changes prayer from a request into a remembrance, from pleading into praise. And when your life is guided by genuine appreciation rather than constant striving, you discover a profound truth. Fulfillment is not something you chase until you catch it. It is a state you enter first, allowing the visible world to gradually reflect the invisible confidence you have already embraced. For most people, time feels like an unbreakable law. They believe they must wait for the right season, the right opportunity, the right connection, or the right circumstances before life can finally change. Every dream is placed somewhere ahead on the calendar, always just beyond reach. They count the days, measure the delays, and wonder why nothing seems to happen fast enough. Yet, what if the distance between you and your desire exists only because you continue to place it in the future? What if the greatest barrier is not time itself, but the state of consciousness from which you are living? Your inner world determines how you experience the outer world. When you believe fulfillment is far away, your thoughts, emotions, and actions unconsciously reinforce that belief. You wake up expecting to wait, and every passing day becomes evidence that the waiting is necessary. But consciousness has the power to collapse that illusion. The moment you decide that your desire is no longer ahead of you, but already behind you, as though it happened yesterday, you begin to experience life from an entirely different perspective. Instead of chasing an event, you remember it. Instead of hoping for a result, you rest in the certainty of having already received it. Consider how quickly yesterday becomes unquestioned. No matter what happened 24 hours ago, your mind accepts it without resistance. You do not argue with it or wonder whether it might still occur. It has already entered your story. By placing your fulfilled desire into that same mental position, you remove it from the category of uncertainty. You allow your imagination to transform possibility into memory, and memory carries a weight that expectation cannot match. The heart relaxes because it believes the journey is complete. This shift changes the way you move through the world. Imagine two people pursuing the same goal. One constantly worries about when success will arrive, checking for signs and fearing disappointment. The other quietly carries the feeling that success has already become part of their life. Outwardly, they may perform similar actions, but inwardly, they live in completely different realities. The first is driven by lack, while the second is guided by fulfillment. Over time, their experiences begin to reflect those inner assumptions. The concept of waiting begins to lose its power when consciousness changes. You stop measuring your progress by the clock and start measuring it by your state of mind. If your inner experience remains stable, peaceful, and convinced, then every day is evidence that you are faithfully occupying the reality you have chosen. You no longer panic because circumstances seem slow. You understand that appearances are temporary echoes of old beliefs, while your present consciousness is creating the next expression of your life. There is also a deep freedom in releasing the need to control every detail. When you assume the desire has already become part of your past, you no longer obsess over how it will unfold. The path reveals itself naturally because your focus remains on the completed experience rather than the process. Opportunities arise unexpectedly, relationships shift, ideas appear at the perfect moment, and doors open in ways that logic alone could never predict. The outer world begins catching up with the inner conviction you have consistently maintained. Every morning offers a fresh opportunity to choose your relationship with time. Instead of saying, "One day my life will change," quietly remind yourself, "It already did." Let your thoughts come from the version of you who has already crossed the finish line. Let your emotions reflect relief instead of longing. Let your gratitude speak louder than your fear. As you persist in this state, the invisible distance between now and then begins to dissolve. You discover that time is not your master but your mirror, faithfully reflecting the consciousness you occupy. When your inner world declares that the miracle is already behind you, the outer world eventually rearranges itself until yesterday's assumption becomes today's undeniable reality. The greatest challenge is rarely imagining your desire fulfilled for a single moment. The real test is remaining faithful to that feeling when the outer world appears unchanged. Anyone can feel inspired for a few minutes, but true transformation belongs to the one who refuses to abandon the inner vision, simply because circumstances have not yet caught up. The secret is not in the intensity of one emotional experience, but in the consistency of returning to it, until it becomes your natural way of being. Persistence is the bridge between imagination and manifestation. Many people begin with excitement. They picture their dream, feel hopeful, and believe change is near. But the next morning they look at their bank account, their relationships, or their current situation and immediately conclude that nothing has happened. In that instant, they exchange certainty for doubt and memory for waiting. They step out of the fulfilled state and back into the old story. The outer world has not defeated them. Their reaction to it has simply restored the previous pattern. What you repeatedly accept as true within yourself will always become stronger than the temporary appearances around you. Imagine standing before a mirror. If your reflection appears unhappy, you would not polish the glass hoping your expression changes. You would change your face first, knowing the mirror can only reflect what stands before it. Life operates in much the same way. Your circumstances often mirror the state you consistently occupy. If you continue to identify with lack, the reflection remains the same. But when you persist in the feeling that your desire has already been fulfilled, the reflection must eventually change to match the image you have chosen. Persistence does not require constant effort or forced positivity. It is a quiet loyalty to your inner experience. It means returning again and again to the memory of your fulfilled desire until it feels more familiar than your current circumstances. When doubt whispers that nothing is happening, gently replace it with remembrance. When fear suggests you have been forgotten, answer with gratitude for what has already been accomplished within. The goal is not to fight negative thoughts, but to become so rooted in your chosen state that they lose the power to move you. There will be moments when the world seems to challenge your assumption. Delays may appear. Unexpected obstacles may arise. Others may question your confidence or encourage you to settle for less. These moments are not signs of failure, but invitations to deepen your faith in the unseen. Every time you remain faithful despite appearances, you strengthen the new identity you are creating. You teach your subconscious that your inner truth is greater than external evidence. Night after night, revisit the fulfilled scene. Feel the joy of the celebration, the peace of completion, the gratitude of success, or the warmth of the embrace you once desired. Let these moments become so vivid that they feel like treasured memories rather than distant fantasies. Carry them into your waking hours until they influence your posture, your words, your choices, and your expectations. Eventually, you will notice that you are no longer trying to believe. You simply know. Reality has an extraordinary way of aligning itself with the assumptions you consistently maintain. The opportunities you need will appear. The people meant to help you will arrive. The ideas required for your next step will emerge naturally. What once seemed impossible begins unfolding with surprising ease because your inner world has already accepted it as fact. The visible world is simply catching up to a decision you made in consciousness long ago. So remain faithful to the feeling. Do not measure your progress by the calendar or by temporary appearances. Measure it by the peace you carry, the gratitude you cultivate, and the certainty that fills your heart persist until the imagined memory becomes the only story you recognize as true. In time, the world around you will have no choice but to mirror the conviction you have patiently and consistently held within, proving that the most powerful force in creation is a consciousness that refuses to let go of its fulfilled state. The secret has never been about forcing the world to change. It has always been about changing the story you carry within yourself. The moment you stop saying, "It will happen one day," and begin living as though it already became part of your history, you dissolve the struggle between desire and fulfillment. Your imagination becomes memory, your memory becomes belief, and your belief shapes the world around you. Walk away from this moment carrying the quiet confidence of someone whose prayers have already been answered. Let every thought, every action, and every emotion arise from that fulfilled state. When you remain faithful to this inner reality, the outer world has no choice but to reflect it. The future is not something you wait for. It is something you remember into existence. Thank you for sharing these moments of reflection and possibility. If this message awakened something within you, do not leave it behind when this speech ends. Carry it into your daily life. Assume your victory, cherish it as a memory, and let your actions flow from certainty instead of doubt. May your imagination become your greatest ally, your faith become your constant companion, and your life become living proof that the unseen always precedes the seen. Thank you, and may every day remind you that the reality you seek is already yours.